you feel it? Can you feel it? Sure rock says. Can you feel it? Sure rock says. Can you feel it? Sure rock says. Can you feel it? Feel it.
Welcome to CERTAmbayan Live. We will be starting in a few minutes. Please stand by.
Stewardship is something that we deeply value. Time, treasure, talents, these are just some of the gifts that Almighty God has entrusted to us. The recognition that we are just mere stewards of what has been entrusted to us helps us to strive for excellence in everything that we do. It helps us understand our responsibility to the people around us and the world that we live in, and how we can change the world to be a better place for everyone. Embedding the concept of stewardship in the core DNA helps us to uphold our core values. These are stewardship, teamwork, entrepreneurship, passion, and synergy. All our businesses are built on the premise of values. We believe that when values are prioritized, everything else follows. To be passion-driven. As good stewards, we're passionate about what we do, and such is shown in the service and products that we deliver and the returns to our stakeholders. To be entrepreneurial and to be excellent in our business. As good stewards, we seek to find business opportunities and maximize the existing potentials of the businesses we are in. And lastly, to be synergized for success. As good stewards, we try to bring together the businesses we are in and the causes we support, ensuring that each element is synergized in line with good stewardship. And as such, at the end of the day, our success is measured by a triple bottom line approach of people, planet, profits. We seek to be good and excellent stewards of what God has given us. We are Zana Holdings Corporation.
Okay. Mayong gabi, mga suking tigpaminaw. Welcome na sab sa laing edisyon sa CERTAmbayan Live. Diin ato pang hisgutan ang mga init kayo nga mga hisgutanan. May kalabot ang ah, problema sa atong mga ah, syudad, mga lungsod. No? So ang atong mga hisgutanan diri sa CERTAmbayan Live like last episode na to about sa to sa health diin atong uh, harness ang gitawag nato og knowledge capital sa atong mga professionals. Nihatag ta og public education for free. Kani siya pag-counter ni sa mga fake news o mga fake information nga nagkalat karon sa atong mga Facebook pages. Labi na karon nga init king issue pertilaghan na nga nigawas nga mga fake nga kasayuran. So, kani ato adiri sa Tambayan Live mo ni pag-counter. Pinagi sa atong mga professional nga nihatag silang higayon, nihatag silang panahon o nihatag sa ilang kahibalo o kaalam para ma-counter ang sayop nga mga pagtuon o niya. Ang misigutan sa mga pagtuon o mga informasyon o niya misigutan sad ang kalabot sa contribute sad mi kalabot sa unsay mo masulti sa mga nagbagang mga issue nga may labot ang atong pagpuyo sa atong mga tagsa-tagsa ka syudad, sa atong tagsa-tagsa ka mga lungsod. So karong gabi una, ang atong topic karon mobalik ta sa atong pahisgutan sa ah, environmental and urban planning. So karong gabi una, uban ako karon si Dr. Ramon Sevilla. Di na ako si introduce, kaya introduce namin ni last time. Nani siya karon sa Thailand. So international kaya ang dating na to ron, no? Unya karon sad natay bagong nakauban sa itong programa karon. We are very happy to have Jennifer Banzon, no? From live from New Jersey. So murag ako ra gyud local ani da. Si Jennifer is ako introduce lang siya gamay do ka. Jennifer is a graduate student sa Michael Graves School of Public Architecture of Keene University sa New Jersey. Yung academic work, ang focus is structural inequities of modern cities and the impact of predatory privatization on public and institutional spaces. Ang master thesis niya is on community justice plans that address the spatial impacts of Barangay Pasil and Ermita in light of the Mega Cebu 2050 plans. So probably in the next mga episode siguro, nindot siguro hisgutan nato dyan ang imong thesis, no? Na labi na kay murag na appeal siguro. I don't know na-touch ba nimong carbon ron kaning anyway ato na hisgutan later on or in the future. Anya, she was recently awarded Honorable Mention Researcher of the Year by Keene University for her research paper on Cebu's rapid urbanization. So mo ni gisgutan ni Doc Ramon nga sige na lang og no development. So karon, she is currently a research fellow working in an urban redevelopment project for Trenton, New Jersey. Design consultant ni siya sa New Jersey. Sa architecture imong focus no, sa urban planning. Pero born and raised in Cebu City. So bisdak yun ni. Pareha ni Doc Ramon. Bisdak yun. Uli dyan siya every 3 years. Kano sa kalas ni uli dyan?
Last ako uli pag 2020. So, kinahalan ko mauli balik this year.
Okay.
Nanta ko yung research. So, hopefully, ma-funded ako research.
Sige, pohon. Makita. Nakita mi Doc Ramon sa Thailand pagka February. Wa ko paabot ni Ari siya diri. Adto Yugo niya. Okay. So, ang atong buhaton ron, maminaw ta sa lecture ni Doc Ramon about tulad ni kundo ka ako lay flash daan about sa iyang research paper sinalay mo hisgot ani mo jump in lang ni Jennifer og nami interaction later on at the end of the lecture tagal na ka na mo free rain doc ug sa imong pila ka okay tas man ni 60 slides ni so depende sa dagan okay so kita maglangan let's all welcome Dr. Ramon Sevilla.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, Doc, loud and clear.
Loud and clear. Okay. I would like to amay gabi inyong tanan. Bisaya man ta pero magkayong ito sahay kay gayon sa langyaw. Magkuan lang ta mag English Bisaya lang ta no. So ang I just want to have a very quick discussion on globalization. No? Kay kanigong globalization o niya kani especially kani siya ang concept of neoliberalization has a very strong impact no, sa atong social formation diri sa syudad sa Subo ug kaning Mega Cebu ug ang kagubot sa atong syudad. And the discussion of this concept is a bit abstract, pero just bear with me kay importante maguning makasabot ta sa basic concepts sa neoliberalization. So masugot ta sa globalization, no? That's a very kuan sa nga na that's a kanang common term nga ang globalization is an increase in international trade, international capital flows across national boundaries, and the key mover of globalizations is transnational corporations or multinational corporations in manufacturing, finance, services, and also even extractive industries. Ya kani siyang globalization, sir, di pa na makaon sa rasin, paminaw lang una mo. Kaning globalization is actuated, no? Is promoted by the ideology of neoliberalization. Usam ni siyang ideology. Well, in simple terms, ideology is a way of viewing the world, no? So it's a worldview. And manay tawag ko sa uban is the narrative, mga dagko mga terms. Ang kanisiyang ideology of neoliberalization that promotes globalization, ang iyang yung explicit, ang iyang dayong kuan, wholehearted goal is the complete deregulation of the global market. Kasi sabot na ni deregulation. Well, ang deregulation means, for example, privatization. No? So, and then marketization. Kung wa dihay market ang kanisiyang area himuan og market. No? For example, ang education sa una that is off limits to the market. Usually na sa gamay pa ko, government pang na ay ginagmay nga private sector. Pero karon daghan na marong kuan public private kind of kanang kuan delivery of sections that used to be just public sector. Yeah, liberalization, which means to open up the economy, remove trade barriers. Pero just a very quick note here. At the moment, muratag mahibong ta nga, kung gi-promoting globalization, nga naman na si Trump nga opposite man iyang kuan, the thing, no? He wants to increase tariff, which is opposite of globalization. Sila man gani ang West, ang World Bank maunay nag-push sa concept of reduction of tariffs through free trade agreements. Na timan ina niya karon si Trump, he wants to launch a trade war, no? So munang kita kasabot ba unsa naman hitabo sa kalibutan. But actually that is the end point of globalization. Okay, ang katong mapildi masuko man gyud. So, sa may sinugdanan aning neoliberalism? Well, it originated in the West, o manigtawag nila global North, to counter the failure of the Keynesian policies to manage the crisis of capitalism. And si Keynes, John Keynes, was a very famous economist nga ang iyang kuan, ang iyang solution sa crisis of capitalism, na siya murag mga levers ba? Kung mauni mo lower gani ang interest mo ni imbuhaton, no, or something like that. So more or less siya kan ba, you just imagine yourself, you are just playing with the levers of the economy, kanya you keep on adjusting that. However, kani siya kang Keynes ng mga policies, it didn't work to manage the crisis of capitalism. Mao to nga dunay Great Depression sa America sa 1920s ba to, late 1920s. So, there was some thought among the intellectuals nga, we should go back to classical liberalism. Ang kanisang liberalism, in simple terms, it is an attention, no, to the importance of the individual. In which case, tagaan ni importansya ang individual in terms of his choices, freedom of choices, and so on. No? Kanya, in order to kani happen man to ang Great Depression sa Amerika, nga wa gin masulbar sa mga policies ni Keynes, there was a reaction against the trends that were going at the time, which was the collective approaches. For example, the rise of labor unions and the welfare state. Unsa ni siyang welfare state? Ang kani siyang welfare state it is a way of providing welfare to the citizens, no, in times of downturns, for example, or in the long term nga matiguang ka, for example, social security, unemployment insurance, welfare payments. Naata na sa Pilipinas gamay ra, pero sa Amerika dako kay nila dito nya provision of basic services, education, etc., medical healthcare in some countries at low cost. So mo ni siya ang welfare state. Now, this was perceived by the capitalists at that time that this was a threat to them. Kay it lowers their profitability. Kay ang mga unions became very powerful. No, yan daghang kay provision ang welfare state that they have to contribute through taxation. Oto naglagot sila. So he said, oh, mas maita aning kuan neoliberalization. Na? Neo in the sense that is new. And ang ang primary concept aning neoliberalization is that the well-being of humans can be advanced by um, liberating individual entrepreneurial freedom and skills. How? By having an institutional framework na it promotes strong private property rights, free markets, free trade. Yeah? And if the markets do not exist, as I mentioned earlier, in certain areas like land, water, education, healthcare, environmental pollution, himuan ni mong market. Okay. And they also advocate cutting back on social spending, kaning welfare state, no, rollback, mo na yung tawag i-rollback nila. Kay ako man nag makaon sa ilang profitability sa kapitalista. And they also promote the idea of offering tax breaks to the rich and the elites, and ensure that the whole world is a playground for investors. Ah. And if mahimo pa, you have to use the military to secure that. Tingnan mo, grabe hapon na natsaray. Well, if you read what happened in Iraq, si Paul Brenner, ang ilang head sa ilang pro-consul sa Amerika sa Iraq, pag-write nila sa Constitution, they made sure good nga in one fell swoop, ang Iraq would it would become a fully neoliberal state ang iyang economy after sa war. So that is written now sa Iraqi Constitution. So dili na sa Cebu, dili na sa Pilipinas, dibo kalibutan. There is Thailand, neoliberalism po. Now, so mo na ang basic idea, no, nga ang neoliberalism concentrates on markets. You know, you privilege the markets. So, however, kani siyang neoliberalism, although it is a ideology, it's kind of a narrative, economic narrative, it manifests itself in space. So, especially in cities where there's a lot of investment. Ang kanisya, klaro gyud kay nahitabo sa Cebu because of the socio-spatial transformations in our city. Nagkaroon gubot na kayo. Makaingon ko anang gubot kay di na mo ko nagtubo 60s and 70s. It was still a provincial town. So when I went home in 2014, I could see the differences. Okay. Now, I'm just going to skip some of this. Basta ang some of the more critical writers here, mga economists or mga activists in Filipinas, they have said that in the Philippines, the ideology of neoliberalism is hegemonic. Say, pasabot na hegemonic, that means it controls, it controls, it pervades everybody. Mga policy makers, mayor, mga konsehal, mga believe sila sa neoliberalism as the only way to go. It's the only game in town. Now, remember, ang neoliberalism, again, privileges markets. It promotes market efficiency. In other words, do not interfere with the market. The state's role in the economy should be minimal. Otherwise, government control is bad for trade and financial openness, affecting negatively private enterprise and growth. So you have to bring tariffs down. No? Muna, kita ang Pilipinas, we joined free trade agreements, which means nga we lower our tariff. Kaning AFTA pananglitan, kanang ASEAN Foreign Trade Agreement, there was a time nga, in terms of the a movement of kanang automotive products, the tariff was very low. Mura man gito 2%. Can you imagine? Yeah, si Trump wants to raise the tariff to 25%. So mo na siya, no? So to maximize market efficiency and decrease government spending, privatize government services. Nakita man ta ni sa Cebu, no? Ang di ba ang kana atong tubig ron mura man nag semi-privatize, attorney?
Mm.
Zig, is it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
Kunya ilang gi-privatize ang carbon, no? So
Mm-mm.
decrease government spending. And then financial liberalization, that means you allow the free movement of capital. Tingnan, unsa man guna sir? Oy? Well, ako lang ko ano, is a very quick lang analogy. Pag estudyante nako din sa Thailand sa mid-70s, paglarga nako sa Cebu, of course I had to get some dollars. Yeah, I remember good at that time, stricto kayo ang gobyerno anang bahin na ng dollars. Di kuyogan ko sa akong parents at bangko, nga nipalit ko, I don't know, 200, $300. Nga gisuwat gina sa akong passport nga pila akong gipalit nga dollars. So that is all recorded. Karon sa liberalization, that means it's opening up. You're free, right? You can go to kanang exchange sa Cebu, that somewhere sa Ramos, palit kag dollars, dali ra kayo. Now, you want to send money abroad, padaan mo sa Western Union, sa una di na mahimo. So financial liberalization is a very important aspect of globalization, current free movement of kwarta, no? Abutin dayon dali ra kayo. No, the same sa tong FW, manugo ng anak o padadala ni kwarta. Okay. So ang kaning neoliberalization, nagsugod ni siya, it started to gain importance during kang Cory Aquino's government. Unya, uh, then during the time of Ramos, Fidel Ramos, there was more liberalization for growth, emphasized privatized urban planning. So ang planning dili na gobyerno through ana na sa private developers. Over time, ang kanisyang atong push neoliberalization, it led to a slow collapse of local manufacturing and agriculture. Nga naman, kay di man ta ka-compete sa other countries, kaya wa na gay tariff. So we are not protecting our own industry. So di kita ka-compete. Patay lang yun. Patay dayon ang kan. Kung naay mga cheap goods from abroad, di ka ka-compete, patay mong industry. Sa una, protektahan man ang industry. You protect the industry, you allow it to grow, and then you open it up to foreign competition. Karon opposite man, ila ding i-lower ang tariffs. O nang kuan, di gyud makasurvive ang local industry, and there was massive job losses by the late 1990s, and by that time, mga late 1990s, the Philippine economy was predominantly service economy without passing through industrialization. So karon tan-aw nimo ang statistics, ang proportion sa service sector is very high, mga 60%. Nga mingon kang unsa may problema na sir? Kwarta man gyapon na. Yes, kwarta gyapon. Pero ang theory man gud ana, if you had an industrialization, yan naa kay kanang value added sectors, kanang supply chains, ang multiplier effect kung na kay industrialization, na kay cluster of industries, is much higher ang multiplier effect. Mientras tanto, ang service economy, like for example, atong mga call centers, ang multiplier effect ana is only through consumption. Kaon ka tabi-tabi, kaon ka o kanang sangan ana mga food chains, sa fast food. Pero remember, kani siya mukaon ka kunalitag fast food, dako kani siya leakage. Kaya ang kwarta na adto man as mga multinationals or mga foreign suppliers. So gamay ra gid mahabilin sa local economy. No? Muna ang kanisiyang service economy is very questionable. Kaya it's really consumption based. Ang impact through the greater economy. Nga, during the time of Benigno Aquino, centerpiece niya, public-private partnership for infrastructure, development, also in social services, yang gi-open na ato social services to PPP, education, health, and housing. And Benigno Aquino actively pursued free trade agreements. Pero ang iyang kuan, wa man ko diha pa sa Pilipinas, I heard nga katoy ang daang matuwid failed to lift most Filipinos from persistent poverty and inequality and pervasive corruption. So ang resulta na increasingly ang kaniyang atong pag-shift to neoliberal economy, it choked the local economy kay we cannot compete with our free trade agreements, weakened domestic industry and agriculture, and kept the country backward and undeveloped. Okay? So, pag-abot na ni Duterte, um, he was the most neoliberal, pro-big business and pro-foreign investor. He vetoed the bill. Remember, katong dito naman ko sa Pilipinas, ito yung koan. He vowed, he promised he was going to end the uh, workers' contractualization. Remember that? Pero, isog mo ni si Rodrigo, pero hadlok siya sa business. So, he vetoed that bill. So, loe kayron ato mga contractual. Wow, gyapon. Agwanta lang, 6 months, mao gyapon, renew. Duterte also cut personal income taxes on most of the elite families, estate and donor taxes. And he increased instead consumption taxes that burden most of the poor. He also cut corporate income taxes for large and foreign corporations and amended the Public Service Act that allowed 100% foreign ownership of public services in the Philippines, okay, which is formerly closed to foreigners. So can you imagine Public Service Act karon? Foreigners now are allowed 100% ownership in public services. So mura gitag full bore ba? Full bore kita sa neoliberalization economy. Our attention is unfettered market. Ayaw intervene gid sa market, no? Ang gobyerno dili. So, unsa may nahitabo sa Cebu? Well, just very quickly, and I think many of you know the history more than I do. After martial law, ang export-oriented manufacturing and tourism were the main drivers for a market-led economic growth. Nya katong tandem nila ni Lito ug Tami Osmeña, self-reliant, investor-friendly initiatives through streamlined business approaches um, led to the Cebu. So the daghan ng kwarta, no? Daghang kwarta niya mo to nga fantastic koan. A lot of money came at first through the export processing zones. Pero nipuli ko sa mid-90s, I was very, very shocked to see nga ang Cebu, which was a formerly provincial town, dunay huge shopping mall in the case of SM Cebu City that's Pabolo. The year after, niabli na ang Ayala. Now, how can this happen? No? Well, it could happen because the wage bill of the uh, Mactan export processing zones at that time was a lot. Mura mo tingin ito, something like nearly 200 million pesos a month. So maka support of mall. Plus the improvement in the inter-island ferries, ang mga elites sa surrounding islands would come to Cebu and shop in the malls. Now, kani siya ang kuan, the opening of these malls, it introduced to us a culture of malls. No, unsa man importante gura na sir. Well, sa una, ang kaning Cebuano, ang reputation aning taga Cebu, tihik kay lisod man atong kaagi, di ba? So daginutan ta. Now, the culture of malls had to reverse that culture, atong habit ba nga, katong sa Magallanes pa sa una, it was defined by a shopping behavior nga buy and go. At to ka sinyaping, palit ka, puli, nandayin ka sa kay jeepney or tartanilya. Karon, ang malls, you have to linger for a while. Karon, makagasto ka yun, no? At to ka sa Jollibee's or whatever, sa window shopping, ana, at to ka sa mga inasal, and so on and so forth. So, they had to change those habits of Cebuanos. Na karon consumerist na ta, no? We value consumerism. So the other thing about the culture of malls or mallization is that it prohibited or it discouraged the development of public spaces. Kay kita bitaw init kaayo nya ang malls aircon. With an average of 32 Celsius, ang aircon sa mall becomes a public good, no? Papabugnaw lang. Kunya, so ang gobyerno nga naman nga maghunaw na tag Ablig Park, na naman ang mall, so it's a privatized space. So it preempted the allocation of new public spaces because the malls were there anyway. Okay. Now, the property boom that followed the industrial boom was again not socially optimal, no? Kung atong ingon ana pag-explain kay ang most of the high-end properties were purchased for speculative gain. Ngano masad no? Ngano na speculative man pud ang mga tao? Excuse, honey, light. So mo to nagsugod na kung speculative gain, you press it on top. How come there's no light? So, excuse me. So, Moto, the buying of housing for speculative gain, that was the beginning of the idea of a city to invest in, not to live in. No? So, ang housing became a commodity for private profit. Okay. So, muna siya ang a few ideas that I wanted to touch sa neoliberalization. Kanya, unsa may mga unfortunate consequences aning neoliberal growth na to? Well, is that first of all, in general na, the externalities tungod kay wa naman tay planning, no? Tungod ang atong gobyerno is more on a retreat stage, more on facilitating development. Um, the result is that ang externalities sa mga development exceeds local government's capacities to ameliorate. That could lead to a future of social, economic, and environmental problems. Unsa man siyang externalities? Well, externalities are costs that are not considered by the developer when they build the project. So, for example, mag-abli kag mall, well, that's gonna be a traffic hub. Kung sa may resulta sa traffic hub, it's gonna be a cause traffic jam. Wa man na giplano sa pag pag-develop nila ana. Kay ang attitude lagi, the government is just facilitate, we don't plan. So that kind of development is not integrated to the city development. Una, gubot kaayo atong syudad. Okay. The state or the government plays the role of facilitator of the private sector initiatives. The planning is left to the market. Most of the time, the focus is on infrastructure planning without urban planning, So kita baha sayo na on himo tag dako kay dihang kuan. Masingan ani kanang box culvert. But without thinking ba unsa may land use? Unsa may mga land use ana sa ibabaw nga nagka-cause aning kuana? Aning problema ha. So we don't think like that. Road widening and network expansion is not enough. Ito, padaka lang ng daan. Well, it's not enough. You need strong land use controls and mass transit. Excuse me. And there is also the tendency now to um, refer or to depend on the corporate approach to city design. So we can see this very clearly. Ang Club Filipino used to be a 42-hectare golf course right in the heart of the city. Gibaligya sa gobyerno sa Ayala. No? So game mo na naroon mo na ang Cebu Business Park. But instead of the government saying, hey, amo na ibaligya ninyo, pero at least, for example, for the same example, 30% of the land will be open space. Karon na ay public space. O man, no? Hey, that's private now. That's you. Kamo na bahala. So, kinsa may napiktahan na mga tao. Kaya wa man tay open spaces. In Metro Manila, for example, the the local planning, the local planners overrode the Metro Manila zoning ordinance in 1990 to make open spaces marketable. Can you imagine? Kita kag open space sa syudad, baligyan nato ni atong ibaligag developer. Instead of saying, well, this is a public resource, this is part of the urban commons, let's see what we can do for the benefit of the people. Maybe public housing, but no, 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 no. We sell it. Okay, and then it's difficult under this kind of narrative lagi sa neoliberalization, it is difficult to incorporate social welfare planning, and there will be minimal thinking about the distribution aspects in urban development. So, as a result, those poor communities that are gentrified, their quality of life becomes reduced, and planners cannot provide relief. So, bahala na mo. Kung i-gentrify na mo ni, it's up to you. The market, you take care of yourself. The market will take care of yourself. So there is very little consideration for the social costs and benefits of the community. And um, yeah, this kind of private planning, like what we see, for example, in IT Park and in Cebu Business, and all this huge development like the SRP, this is detrimental to public welfare because it is not integrated to long term city plans with public interest in mind. Okay. So, mabita na one aspect po nato nga naman nga atong city government is involved in real estate in SRP. Is that the role of the city government? Ngano ni apil man ta ng real estate o baligya? Nya ang development ra ba dili ra ba gyud sa public interest? We are in SRP reclamation ato nang ibaligya para maka-profit ta. Pero ang ako yung question, unsa may ipakita ninyo? If you say that this is going to benefit the people through the sales of the land, asaman, is there really evidence for that? Can we see that? Nga naman nga ang Cebu City Medical Center, for example, o pa man lagi mahuman. Nya katong pagkahalin sa Club Filipino diha, Baligya sa Ayala. Unsa may gamit atong kwartaha, makita ba nato? Uban ingon, sir, gihimo man na ang kuan Trans Central Highway, mao ba? I don't know. So, you have to start asking the question. Nga ang problema po ani good nga ang focus good sa market, no? Nga unfettered market is that planners also do not develop their skills in negotiation, local planning, organize, and even conflict resolution on the local communities that are affected by these big developments. Kaya ang ilang focus is much more in facilitating, land sales and so on to the big developers. Okay, so I will stop here, and then pangutanan ako doon na by reaction from the two interlocutors. If not, then I will go to the spatial form. Unsa ni atong unsa ni problema sa Cebu na ang part is a manifestation of our neoliberal type of urbanization. Is there some kind of questions or feedback?
Well, very complex kayo, Doc. it's, it's a very multi-layered kay siya nga issue, and I think you went through ang katong sa nahitabo sa different presidents during their administrations, and I guess it parallels man sad good sa global market sad, right? Do you think that there was like a possibility for them to, like, do you think there was like a point that they could have like turned around and tried to, like, I guess like try to balance that out, or what gets like choice, you think? Because otherwise, like, or that's what neoliberals would say, right? Why lying choice good? But do you think there would have been a point, yeah, to have actually, like, gone back on top?
Um, I wrote that in my paper. By the way, I have a paper on this. If you're interested to read it, just write either me or Zigfred, and we give you a copy of the paper. There was a citation there that said that among the countries, ang Philippines was the most one of the four most pliant countries when it comes to uh, neoliberal experiments. Now, why is that? I don't know.
Maybe it's
Maybe
a
it's
300
siguro
years
sa atong
colonialism.
history, yeah, colonial history, ang hold sa Amerikano nato, mahadlok mo tam sukol.
Mhm.
So I think that with the way it is moving, we are really a client state, and we cannot say no. Nga, especially kang atong weak kayo atong economy. Anha mo guni magsugod, no? Ngano man na sila nga naaman tay structural adjustment. Well, because if you borrow money from the World Bank, for example, to cover your current account deficit, manay tawag structural adjustment loan. Every time you get a structural adjustment loan, naana siya ay accompanying requirements. So in other words, they twist your arm at the back.
Mhm.
So one of the requirements is lower tariffs, reduce the government sector, even cut pensions. Mo na sa ilang buwan sa
Yeah.
Argentina. Yung ganoon na bitang, why do you have to reduce the government sector? I can't figure that out. Pero akong hypothesis ana, they want the country to do that in theory nga by cutting the government sector, by cutting the civil service, the amount of people working in the civil service, they mugamay na ang allocation for the
Yeah.
pensions. So ang savings sa government should be used to improve the infrastructure
Yeah.
so that it can make efficient the investments of multinationals in the country. Muna ako hypothesis. Maybe I'm wrong. So, well, ang sa ato ang kwarta no ang gamito sa infrastructure corrupt man inoon. So, wa gid dag-anan, no? Pero I really don't know. No, I really don't know. Okay, it's the same in all in Thailand, for example. The World Bank came here. They said you have to reduce your government sector. So karon lisod na kaayon to become a civil servant in Thailand. So in other words, kumusud karon even kuan sa ilang education sector, mga some schools, some departments, uh, ang mga faculty kung Thai ka, it's on a 5-year contract. Dili na ka civil servant. You will not receive pension when you retire. Una ana, unsaon na nimo pag-survive ika-retire nimo. So, so one is the reduction of the government sector. And they have done that also in the Philippines. No? Um, yeah, they've done that in the Philippines. Reduction of tariffs. Yeah, kanang mangutang ta, Kana for example, kana atong pamilya Pantawid, unsa na Zig, Pantawid pamilya, 4P. Unsa may huna-huna ninyo? That is one way of mura magpantakip butas ba? You cover the social cost of neoliberalization kay di man na sila makakuha og trabaho in town kay wa gyud skills o pobre kayo. So in order to maintain social stability, you have to give them that handout. Di ba na handout man na Zig? Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, kani siyang Pantawid pamilya, di man kwarta ha. Well, that's a loan from the World Bank. You Google it. In 2019, we borrowed $300 million. So bayranan na siya ang kanang 4 piece. Di na siya libre. Bayranan na to na. We have to pay that to the World Bank because of their neoliberal policies. So it's the same. There is Thailand. It's like that, you know. Ang diferensya nandere kay they were the benefit of the hollowing of the Japan economy katong Plaza Accords in the 1950s. Nibalhin man din ang ilang car industry, especially the one-ton pickup trucks. So the whole supply chain na sa Thailand kanang mga dili pang export sa first world countries. So, nagatom sila ikuan. Pero I have heard the car sector here in Thailand is also suffering. The economy is bad. They're trying to bring in the Chinese kanang mga EVs. They have some success na mag-transform sila to the EV production. But still, it's risky. And a few days ago, I was just watching a YouTube documentary. I was really shocked, man. Ang personal debt, household debt ba to or personal debt? Yeah, household debt siguro, household debt. Sa middle class in Thailand is about 95% of the GDP. Imagine, imagine 95%
Grabe.
of the GDP ng utang.
Yeah.
Saon na ninyo. Saon mo na sa bangko. Anyway, okay, so muna ang kuan. How do we do that? Well, it depends. Kung naagi protesta, it slows down neoliberalization. Like kaniro sa Argentina nga sa to, yara po nang ilang bag-o ron nga neoliberal kana ilang presidente nga they want to cut the pensions. Ulbo, buto ang mga tao. Sa to, di man tamingon ana kay malagi ko tayo religion, ato lang iampo. So, di kita mo buto ba? Ambot lang ano ni kang Duterte na ay mamubuto man ni sila pero kung other way
Yeah.
lahi mo kita no I don't know what to comment on that. Kani atong ospital nga pag mahuman, can you imagine Cebu City Medical Center nangayon na po to pila to ka million si Canis Garcia karon to finish it.
I guess ang
Anyway.
akong theory sa dana sad is like ang reason nga nung I guess like dili lang sad sa Cebuano sad but like normal middle class lang ang mga tao even here sa diri sa States hataga man gud nimo there's so many little things nga distract nimo enough ang mga tao these little rewards that people get karong mga adlaw bitaw so it's very hard for you to sort of like rise up and saying oh there's something wrong because like oh well here's a shiny thing I'm gonna give you para ka malingaw so there's something else but so it's almost like this like you said neoliberalism is really to promote individualism right like their own personal gain but we never think about the social impact of like all of like these things that we're trying to but it's a
And
very
especially
complex.
now, I think also the influence of social media. It's
Yeah.
very fragmenting. What about the sense of community? Ito
Yeah.
bago pa sa San Carlos, ingko nga naman mo bati naman kayo musuwat ron. Di ba musuwat ka ng kuan ba? Papers, no? Papers. So, dili na di mo musuwat ron o love letters. Isa di man sir kay karon among isuwat sir kuan man heart cupcake. Wa siya pe.
OG.
Sana emoticon heart cupcake. My God, how do you express your feelings for a woman? Heart cupcake.
I was just telling akong anak bitaw sad ga kanang ang Filipino kanang writing because I was reading to her kanang mga kanang mga prose or something like that kanang sa Filipino ko Filipinos are very poetic ba we're very emotive sa among kanang kuan the way we talk siya nga sure ka di mo lagi kay emotive mama like sayo na mo kayo ka
Booking nung ka.
yeah.
Okay. If you want me, if there are no other comments from the public, I can proceed to this. Karon ma-observe na to unsay urban form nga we
Kuan, Doc,
have inherited.
before you proceed,
Okay.
so
Go
may
ahead.
kasulti nimo sa comment nga kuan kaning ang kuan magod ang gusto sa mga tao. And well, mo ay kuan ba kanang common kuan ba nga ah, because government service or mayong di ka gobyerno na magdala bati man gyud. So mas may pag i-privatize marigina bitaw. So may mindset sa mga kalabanan ng mga Filipinos
Yeah,
kay
yeah.
so sa may inyong comment yung
Ako
take ana
okay.
nga
Well,
mindset.
first of all, actually, ang kaning marketization, actually, in one of my, I mentioned this in my paper, kay ang mga tao po nitoo, kay mo na gitawag nila, katong pagkahuman ato ni Marcos Senior, nga there was this corruption narrative nga tanawa kanang grabe and corruption ang tao, so mas maayo atong i-privatize. So
Mm.
mo tong ang privatization gained traction, no? Okay. Tanawa to sa gibuhat ni Marcos nga naka unsa to mga crony. Ay pag ato i-privatize, no? Atong i-privatize.
Mm.
Yes, 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 yes. But ang problema man gusto atong privatization kay ang prices will not remain the same. Musaka man. Kay
Mm.
privatized good and they are there for profit. So kunya wa sa gitay adequate controls sa gobyerno nga ang service doon na sila murag kuan ba standards. So mauna nga the services deteriorate while the
Mm.
prices go up. I have a friend who used to work with the power sector. Yang iyang explicar nako, although I don't understand it completely, it's because ngano mahal tag kuryente tungod sa pag-privatize anang kuan ang power generation. So mo na one reason nga mahal kay tag kuryente. Yeah. Kani pong kuan atong tubig, kani po atong tubig, ngano man na siya nga atong tubig, di ba na semi-privatized na ang MCWD? Why is it like that? Because the
Mm.
government doesn't have any control siguro.
Ang
Mm.
kuan sa dana sad kay ang highest bidder will win, right? Like that's a problem with kanang sa capitalism o kanang privatization kay the more money you can throw at something, the more ka paminawon gyud. I mean, we all have experience, right? Nga kanang mas daghan ka kwarta, obviously, ikaw gipaminawon kay you have the biggest, if but what about people nga dili ka afford? So that's the problem with privatization. And then if you allow na nimo, then you're giving, carte blanche, I guess, like to the idea of like, oh, so okay raman din so we capitulate to this. So what else can we get sa inyo hasad? So the more ka musugot, like the more ka mo allow kapag ka oh, okay raman di ay nga mag highest bidder. So it becomes like this bidding war. Yan muna nahitabo karon nga everybody is all about like, like you can just buy, you can just like buy your way into like everything.
Mm. Mm. Kuan man sa good like for example, let's talk about airports. Ang kuan ron ang NAIA has been kanang privatized. Recently lang mga a few months lang na siya.
Mm.
NAIA is kuan na privatized. So ah, ang MCIAA sa Cebu which is nindot yung kayo na ron ang airport because it is now run by Aboitiz. Pero malagi na the trade-off there is sa inyong gisulti, syempre there's a cost to it. So mutaas yun ang mga terminal fees and all, etc. Compared to when government was running it. So, ang naiya before was, grabe gyud kay like, mulingkod ka dito, o niya, mapaaka na yung kuan og mga book and all. So, it was really, really bad. So, munang ang government ni decide na lang nga, siguro, well, I don't know sa what's running through their mind. So, muna, ang question here is this, should we, kana bang, ug timbangon na to, unsa may kuan, should we just privatize? Kay wala namang gyud like ang government is very inefficient, very corrupt, unlike Singapore nga if it is run by the government, it is very good like Changi Airport and all of their other kuan nga wa nila gi privatize. But in contrast sa Philippines, murabag may pa-privatize na lang kay wala man gyapon ayo.
Yeah.
So what's your take on that? How do we balance that nga, di ba? Supposed to be when public kuan gani, it should be run by the government kay for the good of the public mana para unta to keep the cost down. But unsa man bahala na lang mumahal basta nindot lang or
Well, yeah,
what's the
yeah.
kuan? How do you balance
Yeah,
that?
Well, it's not really a question of balance. I think it's a question of the extent of the privatization. Kay kung
Mm.
mingon ta nga ang gobyerno wa nagi pag-asa, no? Hopeless gyud, wa gi paglao mga
May
visit
paglaom sa
mostly
Sugbo.
corrupt, corrupt, ruthless. Yeah, so why don't we just privatize the government? If you privatize the government, dili na
Ah,
siya gobyerno. Kay di naman government of the people, by the people, and for the people. So we
ah,
become nabiya ni siya Jennifer, do na ba yung mga daghang study des America unsay history sa company town. You
Yeah.
read that, you know.
Muna
It's
siya
awful.
nahitabo sa Trenton karon sir. Mobito
Oh,
ng
it's
akong kuan
awful good.
karon.
It's awful ang
Yeah.
company town. Kay
Mhm.
may nag-order nimo. Of course, it
Yeah.
provided, but wala ka wa kay freedom ba? And this
Yeah.
is also
okay.
what's happening. I don't know if you're picking this up in your literature, review, Jen. Kani siyang 15-minute cities. 15
Yes.
minute cities is actually a method of control. Ang ila ko
Mhm.
no ultimate objective ana nga you should only stay within the confines of your city.
It's
Kaya
more
tanan,
decentralized.
na naman
Yeah.
tanan. So di na igawas nimo, basahon nimo ang unsa na kay unsa na embedded unsa nga na kanang murag tracker.
Mhm.
Nahibaw anday
Mm.
ka nga in other
RFID.
words yeah, RFID. Yeah. So it actually constrains your freedom. So
Mhm.
yeah, kung wa na gitay hope, I mean, to what
May
extent are
pag-privatize ang
we going
gobyerno. Pag wala
i-privatize?
hope.
Unya, ang question po ana, ako pong question ana, Zig, kay privatization is very expensive. Asa man in taong mangita ang ordinaryong tao
Mhm.
o the means to be able to afford these services.
Yeah.
Mm.
Ang
Correct.
katong dili yun ka afford, patay ka. You'll be left on the wayside, which
Yeah.
is a total kanang it's a complete violation of the social contract man. Dapat na ni
Yeah.
social contract between the
Mm, mm,
government and its people. Muna kalistod. No?
mm.
So, yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
sa di pa ta padayon dok, actually nindot na ni imong isgutan unta sunod pero na piled up man ang questions na noon. Kay
Sige,
usahay
sige.
unta wawahir man kani mga Cebuano magpahipi ra man una nga human naghanday pangutana. No, una
Sige.
to si great Lorenzo Leonardo, may gabi attorney, may gabi Leonardo, asa na may mo question, yung kaya daghang question. Anya, kanit taas-taas nga question. Pastor Sam Villar, o sa isa mong pastor sa The Masters Community Fellowship. Doc, kung tinuod nga giprotektahan ang mga kumpanya, labi na sa una, nganong nangasira man ang mga dagkong kumpanya sa Mindanao in the 80s, sama sa Picop in Bislig, Surigao Sur, and the biggest paper industry in Asia, National Steel Corporation in Iligan, Nasipit Lumber Corporation, mga copper mining in Surigao, ug daghan pang dagkong kumpanya with more or less 8,000 each ka mga mamumuo. Naabay kalambigitan ni sa neoliberalism, palihog atagi kog katinawan. Yan sa
Okay.
imong
Daghang
sulti ana doc.
salamat, Sam Bill, sa
Mm.
imong pangutana. Not all of the failures can be attributed to neoliberalization. Well, it could be that the management was very inefficient. No, wa man ko
Okay.
kasubay ani ang history sa Picop o katong National Steel, but I know
Yeah.
that National Steel as Iligan became very uncompetitive. Why? I don't know. But I'm sure on one hand, ang kanang opening sa tariff, uh, you had this cheap imports, ang atong production was so inefficient for many reasons, poor management, mahal tag kuryente. I don't know unsay comparative cost diya sa kuryente diya sa Iligan kay namang, di ba, Maria Cristina Falls.
Mm.
Ang kanang peak of I don't know, basta I have fun memories kay ang kanang peak of pag graduate na ako sa San Carlos, mamunta na one of the few employment places para mga new graduates sa engineers sa una. So, kung wa pa ko nakaadto sa Langyaw, ana ta ko mo kuan diya, katrabaho
Mm.
sa pickup. Or I don't know, no? Unsa yung mga, I mean, that has to be studied. Kung unsa gi cause ana,
Cost.
could be partly, very poor management, inefficiency, atong tax structure, and so on.
Demand
Competition
sa
sa
Doc.
other countries. Yeah, demand.
Demand,
Yeah,
oh,
correct. Yeah.
for the products.
Yeah. Ngano gibaligya man na ni Ramos, 'di ba? Si Ramos nagbaligya ng National Steel.
Mura sa time ni ko ano,
Ngano
Ramos.
gibaligya man na niya.
Ah, taka na
Next
murag
question.
okay, next question. Uh, government owned and controlled corporation ang MCWD, Sir Ramon
Okay.
Sevilla.
All right. Okay. Kung government-owned and controlled corporation na, ngano di man nila ma-improve ang services. Ngano musaka man ilang presyo. Doon na unta sila murag review mechanism ba sa increase sa prices. And I just have to mention this, no? Kay kani siya kanigud ang liberalization was applied also in the West. So Western Europe. Unya, because of the resistance of the people, there was a tendency, you Google this term, remunicipalization. So in other words, ang mga tao, ni-vote sila, nga dili na may gusto ani privatization, kinhangan ang municipality na or ang city, maunay mo manage sa public services. You Google that. So there is a trend in I know that in Ireland, this happened sa ilang water. I don't know what city that was. The people decided nga di na ni mahimo ang kuan kaning privatization. Mahal ang hinoon. Nga bati pag service.
Mao gid hitabo sa kuan Metro Manila, run by private corporations biya ng kuan
Pero ang
water.
question lagi,
Boracay.
nga naman ang gobyerno nga inefficient man gyud. Why is our ethics so bad? Kaya nagsaligta nga, i-privatize bitaw, bahala na mo diya. Di ba self-fulfilling? Is it not self-fulfilling? Kaya mingon na so samok na kayo na diha. Nga, political appointees, mga maayong laki, di gina mahimo, di man professionalize ang personnel. Ato na lang ihatag privatize. So that's a
Okay.
that's a good question to pursue. Ngano man ta na di magita makahimo. Una agod kung if worst comes to worst, bati gid ay ta kanang atong army ato na i-privatize.
Mm.
Una i-privatize ng army. So mahal kaayo kay all mercenaries man.
Bitaw. Napailaing question dire from Fems Tulsidas. Good PM Doc, what is your personal outlook of our progress in the Philippines in the next 30 years compared with our Asian neighbors, particularly among the third world countries?
Aha. Kalisod po nimo question, Fems. Well, ako, I am not unsa ka na kana bitang kuan kanang mutan-aw og kanang sa future using tea leaves
Kuan,
or the
Madam Auring Doc, Madam Auring.
I cannot predict the future. Pero one thing lang yun, no, kanang nipulim gyud ko na 2014 to 2020, ana gyud ko naka-experience gyud ko pagbalik nako. Ang ato man good ba, lisod gyud ay ta kay first ang atong inheritance, what we inherited from colonialization. Kinahanglan ma-change na, no? Pero saan sa pag-change nga bati kita ang education system. Now there's such a thing as decoloniality. We change our thinking, nga naman tayo, we have to understand first how we became like this. Yeah, we have to change that. Pero mao lagi na ang ato pong kuan, ang atong education system is so bad. Nga magsugod ta dahil sa decoloniality, nga more and more aware ang mga tao where we're coming from. Ana na unta ta mahimo diha og atong own national ideology. Who are we as Filipinos? Why are we like this? There's a very important aspect. I just want to share. Maybe you disagree with me. There is one aspect yun nga lisod kay sa tuwa maka-bring together in united ba, and that is the issue of language. Ngano man ta nga patagalugon man ta nga ang akong hibawaan sa pag-graduate na ako, aklat. Nga adto ko sa Manila, nangatawa ang mga Tagaog. Aklat. Saan ang aklat mo? Saan ang paaralan? Di man din na Tagalog. Formal man din na. So, ingon ka nga, unsa may itong buhaton? Well, we look at our neighbor. You know, Indonesia has more dialects and languages than Philippines. The Philippines, ang ato, we only have about 9, major languages. Ang Indonesia, they try to incorporate all these little, small, fewer language speakers, and they form the Bahasa Indonesia. Ngano di matak makahimo ana? Although karon, I noticed pagkuli na ko sa kuan sa Cebu after a long absence, daghan na po kayong mga Tagalog words nga ni seep in into our dialect. Ate, kuya, wa may ate kuya sa una, ngano na ate man taong ko, ngano na kuya man ko. So I think that's
Pero
one issue. That's one issue, no?
pero
Kanang language.
considering kuandok ba? Ana nga diversified kay ang languages sa Philippines. Unsa may take there? Both of you say take niya sa federalism. Uh,
Asi ko ana si Jennifer on sulti ah.
Take so.
ito, considering lain-lain na culture, language, nga usa man ni sa Grace ni Doc Ramon nga mo ay kuan. Usa sa barrier to uh,
Barrier to like
kaning growth.
unifying ang whole. Barrier to unification.
Barrier to kuan gyud growth.
Barrier to growth. I mean, daghan jud kay para nako gyud. It's really ang kanag yung ang consumerism. Mo gina akong kuan gyud. It's like lisod jud kayo to have like kanang empathy, which is so funny kay religious kita nga kanang country, but it's so difficult to have empathy when you're also struggling sad mismo sad, right? I don't know about like language, kay di ko makasabot kay Tagalog and bisag karon maglisod jud ko gihapon og magtagalog, but I guess that's like to do with like I don't know, like I think like the thing sa ato is like we just don't have like we don't have like too much empathy with other people. Di kita ka kanang kuan ba with kahimtang sa atong mga ubang mga tao na to, because like kanang especially if magkalisod ka, why would I help other people if magkalisod sa ko? So you have to get out of that mentality para you can actually be more empathetic. But yeah, I don't know. It's a very complex kind of issue. I keep saying that, but tinuora yun. It's just like next is the more ko mo learn about kaning like about like these issues of Philippines or even here kaning sa akong studies sa kanang sa Trenton, it's lisod jud kaayo siya to unwind, because you have like there is a states like you would think like you have like you don't just have like you also have different kind of cultures that come like kanang like a and they're all like there's an agglomeration of different cultures said, right? And you have to like address those different cultures said as you're trying to like create like different like social social impact. So it's in Cebu, I haven't like I don't really like I haven't gone to really like done my kanang like on the ground like research, but like as far as I know from researching, it's more of like we can't sympathize with other people because like we're so like we're so like we're so conflicted with our own issues that it's hard to be empathetic with everybody else. So
Yeah. Doc,
Ang
take. Go
ako
ahead.
lang ko akong take kaning federalism, I think it's too early in the game, because in the first place we don't have a national ideology. We don't have a national ideology. I mean, who are we as a Filipinos? Yang ato ko ng hero si Rizal, unsa may gibuhat na Rizal di Cebu, kung tibaw ng Rizal. I mean, wamba, we cannot relate, we cannot relate, and we are an archipelagic country. So, lisod kay bita pag-relate sa Kapampangan, kita ta to. So, Ilocano, di ta magkasabot. So, mga Bisaya, maalam na imong kanta. Gahi kayo pronunciation. Sana Inday, made. So, ang akong una-una before we even start thinking of federalism, ato na yung unahan atong wa magutay mga intellectuals. Sila ang Indonesia, they had Sukarno, kato ilang sana Pencasila na lang mga belief system nga mao na ato we as Indonesians live by these principles. Waman tayo, principle. Waman tayo principle. Ang ako lang ko ani, kana siyang federalism, that may be, yeah, I would agree with that. But in the future lang unta na, kay wa pa man tayo, we have to improve our education. Ang ako lang ani, ang akong take ani nga, maybe for us, no, maybe we should shift to the parliamentary system. Maybe it helps. It helps kay naman tayo na kanang no confidence, and then we learn to work with each other kanang mga parties. Maybe we can start with that. So kani federalism mao lagi gyapon kay na magapon tay mga sana kanang mga dynasty. So it becomes a fiefdom, it becomes a fiefdom at the local level. So
Which is probably going to happen if especially karon nga grabe kita o kanang, unfettered privatization right now. So
yeah.
I mean, I think ang kanang bitawng even with kanang sa conversation with kanang architecture lang magkagubot yung mga tao giron sa history sa to architecture moingon sila ka sa Spanish man nga kanang kuan you have a Spanish kanang nga mga infrastructure, and then no, it's not that, it's like something else more
So
organic.
murag walay identity, walay
Right,
identity.
but I do have like an argument against. I think it's like dabe. It's very kanang interesting ang kanang Filipino nga kanang architecture identity. I mean, I think it's different sa, like it's a little different sa kanang sa Spanish. But again, it's to do with like study jud ka na gid with like our history, and you have to have like. I don't necessarily think nga kanang you have to have an agreed history of like kanang sa hitabo sa like where our agreed nga kanang architecture or something like that. I mean, I guess like all conversations should be valid, right? Like everybody has to have like a kanang good nga kanang conversations about that. But I mean, we don't even have a unified like kanang identity when it comes to that. So, I mean, I work with kanang nakoy kanang maestra karon who actually kanang created that kanang sa BRT nga station. Like they were like they were the ones who developed that like BRT station sa Cebu, and they were like they were asked the mga local architects nga, like what is the identity sa Filipino unsay kanang kuha nimo for architecture, and then yun sila so they always get duha ka book different kanang mga answers. Oh, it's like Spanish style or something like that. Nga suban nga, oh, it's more
Kanang Figola lift sa kuan BRT
Oh,
nga
dili
design.
kanang usa kanang sa dito gid sa bus station or something like that. Kanang I think it was like by architecture kanang casa. It was like a casa.
Okay.
But yeah, like so they ended up making actually pinaleaf such as nga style nga murag kanang sa station this is Cebu. I'm not sure where, but they said like like they just like stuck to like what what the people told them nga muna siya nga organic lang nila nga style, but even that like people can't agree unsay kuha nila identity for that.
Mo bitaw na nga ang BRT perting dugaya kay daghang di ba kasi tanay daghang aspect hasta dahil sa station design. Pero anyway, last na lang ni in relation sa question ni Fems ba, daghan manggog mga feedback nga madunggan nimo sa mga common nga tao nga nabiyaan na kuno ta sa Vietnam, which is supposed to be layon okay nato before 1970s 80s yan ay mga daghang memes sa Facebook nga nanggawas nga napay mga picture nga Singapore, Vietnam, Malaysia, marag backward kayo tan-awon niya ang Pilipinas, like especially Manila, the Paris of Southeast Asia unya. Unsay take ninyo considering ang iyang question ni films there is in the next 30 years ba nga is there really a kuan nga marag sense nga naawahin na ta nga murag naapsan na gyud ta or maapsan ta kung inani ang trend, especially now nga napag ito ni sa Facebook nga kuan nga na-overtake na ta sa Vietnam sa banana export, and sa una IRRI is with us, International Rice Research Institute nya karon is usa tas pinakadakong importer of rice. So mo na murag general perception sa public nga murag maapsan na gyud ta ni padong. So based on that, do you agree with that assessment nga in the next 30 years murag padong na gyud ani siguro sa nanatas pinakaubos sa Southeast Asian nations instead of nata sa top 5? What's your take on that?
Primero, ang akong tubagan ni Binuang. Saan na to? Bisan pag maawahi ta, paano ta in English? Paano ta in English nga? Atang gwapa.
So,
So
mag-export na lang tagkuhan manpower.
um kanang dili kita mo asenso kay we don't have our own
Identity.
nationalistic stand, na independent bitaw ta. Kasi una ago ni sukad pa ni sa kang Marcos hantod karon, Marcos Senior. Nga we totally embraced the World Bank, neoliberalism. Nga ang atong industry, wa gyud na I think it's our industry now is wa gyud, it's wiped out. We don't have captains of industry. So
Mhm.
mana
Well,
atong agriculture is very bad now. Kay wa man ta.
isn't ang Cebu like also trying to like do like expanding ilang KPO said right now, like ang ilang knowledge process.
Process
Yeah.
outsourcing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mo lagi ginaingon ni Doc nga why kaso kay may man in English. Ang problema kay pulihan mag AI na.
Masad mo. But like ang problema sa Cebu sad right now, I think para nako dili ang problema ang 30-year outcome. It's more of like unsay mahitabo in the next pila ka years, especially with the kankig problema
Correct.
right now sa Cebu.
Near term.
Like,
Ang
In
near
the
term.
short term.
ang near term, ang
Short term and
In the
mid
short
term.
term.
Yeah.
Hindi pa kita magkasinabot, so sa 5 as sa next year na plan.
So ang ako lang, kay I have traveled here in the Greater Mekong subregion. Um, one thing it's sa Vietnamese is that they know who they are as a people.
Mm.
Even though they were colonized brutally by the French, but they had their intellectuals who went home. So that's Ho Chi Minh. Yeah, kan ba? They built their own ideology, reunification. So, they stand proud kay they defeated the Americans. Ako kita sakripisyo atong giraha. I learned that when I was working in that region, nga kada Vietnamese ma-meet nimo had a relative, a father, an uncle, a cousin who died in the war. But they came out on the winning side. In spite of throwing, and the Vietnamese were willing to throw, another thousand of Vietnamese. Kung wapato na nag-peace talk, they were willing to die. Kita, sugot pa nandayin ta. Kung sugot ito sa Amerikano, madlok ta. Taas ilong, little brown brother, tando na lang. Bitaw, I mean, lisod gyud sa tuwa kay daghang kay na-educated sa Amerika. Unya ang na-educated dito, puro ra po dito pro-American ang gawas.
It's also ang imuhang colonialism talking said sir.
Ha?
I think we need kanang grassroots gyud sa noon. I think that kind of ba siguro sa Cebu karon og kanang mga tao who are really trying to like do what they can dito sa kon, but it needs more, right? It needs more like you always say
Yeah,
sa na political will. Dyan.
you need a critical mass for this.
Yeah.
Di
Yeah.
gina mahimong ginagmay lang. Sus, kuan din nimo oy kana hinawayon kay
Kuan na
ka.
lagi ka.
Hinawayon
Pero-
kay ka. Maayo na ta kay dito sa Amerika. Pag ikaw wag ka ma-ista dito.
Pero Doc, ingon man kang si Ho Chi Minh ni uli gyud sa Vietnam. So, murag
Leon
kinahanglan ta
ka, sir.
og Ramon Sevilla og Jennifer Banzon nga muli sa Cebu para tarong ang Cebu City.
Ani uli naman ko pero I wasn't welcome, so bahala mo diha. Bahala mo
Katapos
diha.
ang katapos ang comment ni Pastor Sam sa di pa ta mo proceed sa imong lecture, Doc. Backward development kuno ta. Na ba day backward nga development pa?
Well, the term for that, Mr. Sam, is maldevelopment. No? It's a
Maldevelopment, yes.
maldevelopment. You are developed to become, for example, dependent. It's a dependent form of development. Munay ang correct term, ana. Dependent development, maldevelopment. The other term I really like is modernization without development. Kasi sabot ana, modernization without development, ang hitsura modern para Cebu,
Fasad or fasad.
pero ang fasad, ang maniho di ay ang sistema sa gobyerno, my God, it's so feudal.
Mm-mm.
It's so backward, it's so personalistic, dili ka ng meritocratic, yeah, ana ba? So that's not development. So modern kay ta sus ninduta oh. Nindut kay hanggang itag kuan, hanggang itag kondo.
Mm.
Mahal na ba ang kondo?
Mm.
So yeah,
Correct.
it's I mean these are some of the problems that one has to face, and has to constantly think of. Ya karon ra ba gyud, Jennifer, mo PhD man ka, wa na ro'y discussion sa development theory. Development theory is bunk. Na may tingon nila is bunk, is BUNK. Wa na na binuang na ng development theory. Kay why? Because we're totally sold out to the neoliberal development. Unsa may alternative? Magrevolusyon?
Na.
Kung revolusyon ka, regime change sinuong ka.
Mm.
Mao sad mo na may tabo gyud. Ang kado ka ng term karon nga bago raw kado ka nga term karon kanang anarcho capitalism kado ka na sir more kanang ang full kuan na gyud full I guess like kanang mo dili na gyud like nawa na gyud it's like the kuan of like the government state like it's the complete like like it's a complete like kanang giving up like all the privatization of everything even government. That's what they use right around here na kung magstoryahan ng mga tao where ang the US is going towards an anarcho-capitalist because all the tech bros na kuno karon ang grabe kayo o kanang kuan so that's the term that everybody's like talking about and I think it's like sticking sa kanang mga batanon ba ya karon dire. So, like it's really about like magsigilan jud kag magsigilan jud kag storya like you talk about like ang similarities nimo sa kanang with everybody else versus like like you have to like teach people I guess nga mo punch up instead of like kanang punch each other, right? Like instead of like saying sa man animo or something, like you start to question ang imong the people not just in government but also the ones who are in power like the private, the big tech companies mo sa nakaron sad.
Yeah.
Mo mo
Yeah.
nang kuan ron sa kang Trump kanang ilang kang
Yeah.
Elon Musk and all.
Yeah. It's a billionaire club. So yeah, well, that's America.
Yeah.
Cebu
No,
is
but I
another.
think daghan
Cebu is
ko
another
makita
issue.
ang kanang commonalities which is
Oh
like,
yeah, yes, sure,
yeah,
sure,
it's
sure, sure. Especially gid ang kuan ba, the retreat of the government
yeah.
under neoliberalism. You must not interfere with the market. So may man nga unsa man kay imong solusyon sa Cebu? Well, we submitted this. We had some proposals paghimo nila sa kuan sa CLUP katong I think it was 2018 we submitted. Wa gani acknowledge sa City Hall. So it was just a waste of our time.
Aga na dog
Ang kuan,
ato nang hisgutan dire para worth it to imong gibuhat. Ato
ang
niya nang
kuan,
hisgutan dire in the future.
ang I mean, I think a very commonsensical approach to this. We cannot have unlimited growth. Imposible yun, no?
No.
With the way we're going right now, this is going to have a day of reckoning. Kay
Mm.
karon ang akong solusyon ani, well, we worship the market. If you cannot afford Cebu, kamay bahala, no? Kamay bahala sa inyong solusyon. You find somewhere there in the periphery and you bear the social cost of commuting.
Mm.
So, kung pait ka mo kuan sakripisyo kada adlaw, well, that's your problem.
Mm.
Kay mo man na, that's neoliberalization. Na atong i-minimize atong hunahuna sa social welfare. Ibig sa
Mm.
hunahuna ta og kuan housing, low income housing, bahala na sila diha. Bahala na sila. So, we worship the market. Let the market prevail. Kung ka-afford mo, maayo. Kung di mo ka-afford, bahala na mo. When I did
Ye-
my research, kanya akong paper sa neoliberalism, I think ang projection by 2023 in the Tri-Cities, Cebu, Mandaue, Talisay, or Mactan, there will be 50,000 condominium units. Now, when you think
Mhm.
about it, something 50,000, are they Cebuanos? Lumad Cebuano? Or sa sila kanang migrants, AFAM? What are they doing here in Cebu?
Yeah.
Imagine 50,000 units. Well, kung maka-afford ka, okay. Nya karon, kumusta maron ang market diya, Zigfred?
Kuan sa Metro Manila dok nagkuan ta, naglat ta og kuan mga
Lot. Sa Cebu,
siguro naglat og na unsold for
yeah,
inventory
yeah,
for
I
mga
read
3
that.
years.
Ang
Yeah,
Cebu,
Cebu not yet. Cebu not yet. Pohon.
pero
Hapit na.
mahingay gyud ang sales. Mahingay ang sales sa kondo.
Kuan biya, mo na kitong ingon, unfettered biya ang development biya. So walay control. Sige lag kuan. Tukod jing tukod.
Kasi may namalit ana.
Ah, wa pa ko kakita sa profile sa market pero og
Wa
kuan
may
lang
data
kala
lagi.
quick and dirty
Data.
analysis mga usually foreigners, OFWs. Yeah, it's being marketed as an investment gyud na siya.
Yeah.
So which is actually sayop kay ug mo kuan na siya mo bubble na. Mo kuan gyud kung sa
Ginamit
investment ana. Pero look, anyway, before tamo go, last na lang yun eh. Before kay, nindot man imong sunod kay about ko naman eh, overdevelopment. Doc, comment na rin, I think. Politics seems to be our engine of progress. Ang problem is, pirmi man gubon our engine. Mao nga hinay kayo atong progress. From
Yeah,
FEMS.
yeah. That's a good observation. And I think the question should be, why do we ako pagtanaw na imong question, ang characteristic ko sa Pilipino, we are on a self-destruct mode. Imbis ninduton atong syudad, ngilaron man. Why is it that we are always in a self-destruct mode? If we are proud of where we come from, if we are proud of ourselves, dili nato nabuhaton. Kaya mauwaw man ta, di ba? We would have
Beto.
a sense of shame na we are destroying our country. What bitag watay sa term na, why uwaw? Watay uwaw? No, bisag sa atong balay, magluwa ta ba? Why
Mm.
do we do that? I mean, ano man kita ingon man dana?
Mm-mm.
Gubon. Para ko bago ko Cebu, sa tong hotel akong ikuanan niya, doon na like stack of newspaper, a stack na STACK. Yeah, doon ay sign nga, please leave the newspapers here. Ano kawaton na sa ninyong newspaper? Di mo ka-afford newspaper. Mabuhat. Ano ba, I mean, things like this, kung dugay-dugay ka na sa abroad, marag ma-shock ka ba? Nga naman na ingon ani.
I think it's social behavior nga kanang kuan. Is it just like asa man sila, like, is it just because kay naayong opportunity so you just do it? Like mga opportunity ka makakawat so you just do it? Like is that
Yeah, I mean, it could be scarcity,
yeah.
scarcity. Pero to have a
Pero kuan
sign
man
or
dok,
warning,
ni check in mas hotel. So di siguro to
Yeah, but
kuan.
dili kinahanglan tanan.
Natoy kwarta kay ka check in mas hotel.
awa mo ni check na to, diyan ni sa lobby.
Ade, ang kato nagkuha ba? Nanguhas newspaper.
Okay.
Pero anyway, Doc, maybe maka-proceed na ka sa next 10 to 15 minutes in kuan naman application sa imong discussion on
Okay,
neoliberalism.
okay,
Can
so
be seen in the kuan.
kanisya, ang next part of my presentation is to look at some of the manifestations in our city. Sa spatial, no? The spatial aspect sa neoliberalism. Okay? So, can you move to the next slide? Next slide. Okay, this is just a map of Mega Cebu. Muna sila ang mga municipalities nga membro sa Mega Cebu. The next slide to your right, ang kanang circle nga red, that is the equivalent of the relative population ng tingalina. Okay. So Mega Cebu consists of these municipalities occupying 20% of the total land area, but it has 67% of the population. Next. Yeah, or any basic propositions. You need a good governance. Malagyapan, this is the globalization narrative. No, you have to have good governance, effective urban management, so that you can attract more investments. Otherwise, ang economic benefits from globalization, diligin mo anha diya. Nga naman ang Cebu nga gubot kaayo ang traffic. No, that's one thing. For example. Okay, next. This is the objectives of the paper, unsay possible trajectory of Cebu City in the near term. Muna akong presentation sa UP International Conference on Regional Planning 2018. Okay, and then yeah, I found out unsay mga physical institutional constraints that impede the further expansion in Cebu City and all that. Yeah. So next, okay. Ang ako aning presentation ani, I said that we have to recognize the physical limits of Cebu cities, no? Cebu city's expansion. It is the starting point for planning. Ang total land area of Cebu is 315 square kilometers. That's the PSA, Philippine Statistics Authority. And only 8% of the land is flat land. Okay? So 8% of 315 square kilometers is 23 square kilometers. Ora na ang flat land sa Cebu. Now, kay kang ano man, kay daghan man itong bukid. No? Daghang itong bukid. So urban expansion in a coastal plain that is being urbanized exerts a linear north-south expansion pressure that leapfrogs the city's boundaries. Tungkol sa atong geographical atong geography rather. Now, the urbanization in Cebu City covers 49.7 square kilometers, or only 15.2% of the total land area of the city. Kana gikan na sa JICA. So, imo na siyang isubtract ang 23 square meters, square kilometers na flat land. So, 26.7 square kilometers is already in the hilly terrain of the city. So nikaon na sa mga bungtod-bungtod, no? Sa mga rolling hills ang 26.7 square kilometers. Can you imagine? That's a built-up area. Kung wa na siya flora, wa na siya kahoy, mubahagis ubos. Of the total urbanized land, 811 hectares or 8.1 square kilometers is considered hazardous. Can you imagine? Unsay sabutan ng hazardous? Well, probably the slope is beyond a certain degree, you know. So naamang ko na rule ang unsa na atong department diha kalimot na kus nga na no building beyond a certain slope, no? Ang slope sa bukid ana kung steep ra kaayo, that should be avoided. And at that time when I wrote this paper, there were only 365 hectares that were remaining available for future urbanization. Kani JICA ni data. So most of this 365 hectares is in the SRP at that time. So ang atong gitang subton, there is very little or no more room for expansion in the city. The only solution is to go vertical, build higher densities, or decentralize. Build in the mountain areas, you will be destroying our watersheds and displacing traffic or moving traffic into the mountain areas, which will be catastrophic, I think. So unsa man, if you decentralize, that means you really kick out people. Those who cannot afford the housing within the boundaries of Cebu City, you kick them out in the suburbs, in the Tri-City, the nearby city. Pero that will also increase the commutation, the traffic jam. Okay, next. So we need to recognize the physical limits. Okay. So, dako man kay ning Cebu, no? Narang Cebu sa sa kanang inaay mga yellow. Nanang nasluyo diha bukiro na na. Ya karon na ba I've heard po nga ang kana diyang kuan dan pa daw Spitos. Na po diha mga daghan nga mga subdivisions. So much so nga perting apikihan ng daan sa Pitos, there was a recent post that I posted as a matter of fact sa paglaom sa Sugbo nga ilang i-schedule na ang mga basura nga mga truck kay makasamot kuno sa traffic. So isn't that strange? Kung inyong i-schedule ang garbage truck, will that not affect the collection time? Idaghan naman ang mga tao diya sa unsa nang na diyang barangay na una hospital. I forgot the name. So two-thirds of the population in Cebu City is within 15% of the total land area. So, in other words, what they're saying, very high density ang atong syudad. Two-thirds of the population is with yellow, colored yellow. Okay, next. Next.
Eps. Ada. Okay.
Kanisya, I got this from a very good website nga gi-monitor nila ang population growth. So makita gini mo ang growth from 1995, 2000, and 2014. Um, I'm proud to say that I think the main researcher for this was a former uh, professor of mine. Kadungog ka ni Dr. Angel, Slomo Angel, Jennifer, kani
No.
Atlas or Urban Expansion. So,
No,
makani
but
siya mo
I've seen this kaning map said noon.
makani siya mo number crunching. So, mo ni
Mm.
ang expansion sa Cebu, no? Natay dahang open space ito 1993, napuno na agad off, napuno na pag 2014 pagani na. Next.
Are those mostly transplants, sir, or like from kanang gikan sa province, Cebuana sa city,
I'm
or
sure. I'm sure these are all kuan,
Most likely.
mostly
transplants from
migrants.
other cities? Yeah.
Oh, migrants. Yeah. Next, rapid growth has brought negative externalities. Externalities again are costs which are not included in the calculation of developers. So, maabli kag subdivision, but that will generate traffic, but that's not part of your calculation. So externalities, the negative externalities are these things, for example, like traffic. Unya, isa may mo take care ana, di ang gobyerno. So ang pag-take care nas gobyerno, ambot lang, banilad talambad traffic, a state of calamity, a disaster. This is 20, sa tuiga. Karon ni, arang-arang na ni ron.
Grabe na yan. Samot ka grabe.
Samot ka grabe is bantal. Okay, next. Napagay mo tanong, unsa may solusyon nimo? Na kani Saturday Carmageddon,
Lakaw tanan, lakaw tanan.
2017 unya wa pag itoy Ming Lanillas traffic enforcers were not present because they were attending the Christmas party. Di ba wicked problem
Pait,
gini, Zig?
Perti
Wicked
ka
problem
wicked.
gini. Who cares? Who cares? 2017. I was still there. Next. Land constraints. Of all the highly urbanized cities, this is a category where Cebu City is a member, highly urbanized cities. Cebu City has the lowest rate of annual population growth in the last 20 years. Na, nakita mo ito sa data ani, there are some barangays in Cebu City, mostly na mura sa downtown there. I have a
Inner
map of it.
cities, yeah.
Oh, nga naman, nga negative population sila. Negative population growth rate. 2015 data ni. Why? I don't know. It could be that the communities were kicked out because of new developments like condominiums. It is probably also due to the fact that the most popular kanang work locations have moved elsewhere. Dili na sa Subo to ating alis sa I don't know Mactan, Mandawi, or Dalisay. So maybe I think that requires research. Why is it that some of these barangays have negative growth rate? Now, ang growth rate sa 2000 to 2010, population growth rate of Cebu is 1.88%. It even went down further 2010 to 2015, 1.21%, indicating, at least for me, that we are reaching the limits of expansion. Why? Because we privilege the high-end subdivisions, I mean condominiums, for speculation. Next, please. This is the more detailed data ang population growth rates, ang Cebu City. If you look at the green arrow there, it really went down, no? From 1.88% 2010 to 1.21% from 2010 to 2015. I don't know the data after 2015. Maybe it's even lower, I think. Okay, next. The scarcity of land puts pressure on hilly lands within and outside of Cebu City. If urban limits are not demarcated, vulnerability and disaster risk from climate change will increase. Runoff, floods, landslides in low-lying areas. Okay, kani siya dapit ni siya. I think this is along the Nivel Hill.
River Hills. Yeah.
Sa una mingaw kay na diha kay doon naman ko amigo diyang Redemptorista na ko sa ilang retreat house. Mingaw kay na diha. Karon sus taghanan tao. Next,
Puno nagbalay.
puno magbala. Kani flood simulation sa mga UP people man ni. Nya mo ni ang the depth of flooding na adire on the right sides Mandawi City. Kasi nga na ilang river diha, Zig, kanang
Ah,
Butuanon,
Butuanon.
Butuanon. Nya sa left side, Ristalisa, mo raman ni siya og Mananga.
Mananga.
Na diri sa Cebu City downtown mga mo raman nagmambaling, so mo na ang level of flooding na ilang simulation so using this
I think
fancy
conservative
software.
pag yun na ang sa FEMA kuno daw nga mga flood maps kay conservative ra kuno kayo ni siya.
I see, I see.
Oo.
Okay.
So mas
I can
grabe pag
believe
yun
Mas
ang
grabe
kuha.
pag yun karon kuno
I
daw
can
ang
believe that.
bag-o nga
Yeah.
maps.
UP man, yeah. Mo nangingigs to ka. Next. And and uncontrolled land uses, dense settlements in hillsides results in loss of vegetation, flood, and landslide threats. And this pattern exacerbates our intense weather patterns now due to climate change. Then ingon magin ang JICA nga many people will try to live on these areas, in these hilly areas, if distance to the workplaces is reasonable. Upita na diha pa dong sa Neville Hills, nga grabe na po kaya ng traffic diya sa usan na nandaan na diya paggawas sa Salinas. Nya kani diri akong ang pin, that's the Redemptorist house na murag W, a flat W. Mingaw pa kaya sa una. Nga I heard nga kani silang mga settlements diri, murag gibalhin ni sila either fire victims or something, So yeah, the other side is Marco Polo. How would you like to have a condominium in Marco Polo, and then when you look out of your fancy condominiums in your balcony, all you see are those squatter areas.
Grabe
So
kay ang soil
na
erosion sa dinang nga area kay
oh
among balay sa Cebu actually naman sa dito sa Lahog kanang sa base gate of a hill dito sa kuan kanang dapit sa Marco Polo grabe jud kay mag-uwan grabe kay ang silt magkuan jud makuyawan
so
lagi may kay hugno na magkuan kadugayan.
next. So I took these photos when I was there. Informal settlements, first tier hills of Cebu City. I learned this vocabulary when I was there. Sila si Espina Jennifer. They have this first tier hills,
Steer.
second tier, hills, the third tier hills. Kani, naana nagbungtod, naana yung mga balay. Okay, next. Okay, the danger of favelalization of our hills. This is the Rusinia favela in Rio de Janeiro. Napatigil kadasok. Yeah, when I first saw this picture, I immediately went to the weather data. Ang ilang amount of rainfall sa Rio de Janeiro is of course much lower than Cebu. So dili sila siguro prone to flooding ganang ko ang iba flooding catastrophic flooding para din sa tuwa kay ang ila pong balay diya sa favela is all more mislag kanang stronger ang ilang structures dili pa sa tuwa ang mga nipa ang uban no kahoy so maybe mas stronger nila ha kay it's organic growth. Pero kung maagian nagbagyo, if we had this kind of pattern that is Cebu, maagian nagbagyo, kuyaw gyud, di ba?
Matanan.
Yeah, these places are known to be not safe. Kay lagi poverty, daghang drugs, and so on and so forth. Next. Yes. Kani siya, I inserted this to show nga it doesn't have to be like the Cebu pattern. Sa Hong Kong, they have a definite urban boundary. No? Sa mingo sa ka, ako ana sir, tungod sa nasa ownership. Sa to agod, fragmented big ownership atong bugtod, dahang squatter. So tanawa niyo sa Hong Kong, Victoria Peak. makita magini mong boundary, no? Beyond that, wa naging mga informal housing. That's a trail. I understand this is a trail. They save this for people wanting to hike. So what good? So naa sila urban boundary. Sa Cebu, what urban boundary? So mo na diferensya. Clear demarcation of urban boundary. Next, please.
Development, limit ilang development sa Hong Kong. Kay mga
Oh,
less than 30%, less than 25% ra ang i-develop sa entire Hong Kong, ilang land.
next. There's a second point, which is we need to respect protected areas. Why? Because in our back, there is such a thing as the Central Cebu Protected Landscape, which would have been a very ideal place for a national park if it was developed. So 76.3% of Cebu City's land is covered under the NIPAS, National Integrated Protected Areas system. The CCPL includes four watersheds: Mananga, Kutkut Lusuran, Sudlo National Park, and Buhisan. Excuse me. Plus the Central Cebu National Park. These are very important for our watersheds and the rest of Metro Cebu. However, 23 of the city's 80 barangays are totally or partially located in the four watershed areas of the CCPL. Okay. Nya karon naapagina ron ang Central Cebu Expressway nga mo cut through, I think, through the Central Cebu Protected Landscape.
Yeah.
So kung wa gitay land use controls, the expressway, particularly those sections of the expressway, Cebu Central Expressway, especially those areas which are
Trans Central?
connected. No,
You mean
no,
the
no, no. That's TCH. This is the highway from Naga to Danao. And that's Bukid.
Okay.
Kanang mag-work.
Katong wa panahuman.
Especially,
Ah.
Pamahuman. Kana siyang locations diha nga especially connected to the lowland, anha gina mo abli ang kuan, mga subdivisions and development kung dili i-control. And to think JICA designed that highway, the Central Cebu Expressway, as the urban boundary, meaning to say that beyond that there should be no development. Pero sa toa, knowing Cebu, knowing the local government, mo na ingnon tikat.
It's like signal to build more.
Can you imagine? Why will I not be allowed to build a subdivision beyond that? Unsa man ka attorney? Unsa may balaod ana?
Ang problema masagad do kay mga politiko may mag-una-una og palit sa mga yuta nga example na may ilibawaan nila nga naay example kani MCE kati yung Metro Cebu Expressway mo man ang imong gisgutan. Ikibaw nila nga before pa ma-implement ang project, wa na gihurot nagpamalit ang mga yuta within ug asa agian ng kuan. Nauna ng mga kuan mga politiko ug mga kuan, mga nasa gobyerno. So mo ra
Kani sila Kani po do.
And then they will fight for the conversion of lands.
Dali na ng conversion.
Oo, okay. In fact, naman gani ko andere nga ang DNR pa magay mo tudlo nimo nga tukuri lang na diha kay bisan og non inalienable na kay anyway enigma kuan reclassify na siya aw ikaw mag-una. DNR pa mo tudlo.
Yang ano na man sila Memorandum Order 2111-04 titling and processing of all public land applications are suspended in protected areas. Binuang na no.
Actually doc suspended. Wa ju ma-process but insider lang marabag ka ng ato-ato ato-ato lang niya. Position lang diha kay anyway og malift na ang kuan ang kaning suspension unya og i-reclassify na siya nya ikaw may na diha unya nakatukod na ka di ikaw mag-una diba? Actual mo gina dok actual gid nagi nagsulti na taga DNR to somebody my friend nga mo na gisulti daw sa iya.
Okay, so our laws are not serious.
Correct.
It has to be changed. Okay.
Rules
Next.
for the
The rules are flexible. Next. So this is the map showing the protected areas. Ang kaning yellow, Kutkut Tusara. Tanawa, naman nas likod sa Cebu yun. Part of the Cebu boundary, if you can see the boundary there. Kita mo na, no? Okay. Malagi na, ang atong kuadaan this is very important kay isa kaning CCPL, Cebu Central Sanisha Protected
Protected
Landscape.
landscape.
It's a critical habitat known for its biodiversity in flora and fauna. If I remember correctly, doon na sila rare nga cinnamon tree kuno diha that needs to be protected. Okay, so that has to be protected karon ang natay biodiversity. So with that highway, do you think they can protect this? Nah, I don't think so.
Issue na magyan na ron, Doc, if you research tanaw nimo dyan ang kuan, i-google na nimo kaning CCPL. Daghang problema kay daghan na magtuko dito.
Mala yun, dili na makuha.
Sabi.
Oo.
I guess kay kung naay makasugon, ang ubang mga tao may isang makatukod sa deko. So,
Oo. Anya ang worst pag yun ana is katubitang nagkanang hearing sa Congress about kaning sa drug war ni Duterte. Actually walang kay ito na pick up sa media and all, pero kitang mga planners maka-pick up ta dayon kay concern man gud ni nato. Kinamdam mo ni katong Garma, katong pulis nga central sa kuan ni Duterte. Murag yung bata-bata. Kataunon kayo kay there was nisulti siya, ni-admit siya pero wa na patuloy na sa atong mga congressman kay di man nimo central silang investigation. Ni-admit siya nga kay gi-question mo siya nga nung naman kay mansion sa Mountain Barangay in Cebu. And that katura ba nga part nga asa nabutang to nga mansion is actually part of the CCPL, the protected landscape. Iyang gi-mention gyud in public in Congress ningon siya nga gingnan mo gud media nga okay ra daw magtukod basta ay lang ninyo kanang katong blanco nga area but katong mga kahoy nga dito ay lang ninyo putla. So meaning ang DNR mismo nag-instruct nila. Daghan daw mga generals, officers of the police nga nagtukod daw in that area. So mo sa feedback nga akong nakuha sa uban katong when I was in Bohol, we had the kaning ENP convention, Environmental Planning Convention, Visayas Convention. Nasa nagbagulbol sa kuha nga unsa may mahimo aning mga general. So if you put 2 and 2 together, so gisulti ni Garma, so kuan gyud ay verified gyud ay nga in CCPL na day mga top ranking officials sa PNP nga nagtukod og mga rest house didto nga illegal. So until now wala gyud wala gyud nag-raise anang issue.
Okay. Oh, very sad. Okay, next. Mo sa ni ang kuan. I raised this kay above the red line. If you can see the red line just above the city, I drew that red line. The slope is 18% or more.
that's really
So
steep.
if the slope is 18% or more, it should be a no build zone. Unless there are strict mitigation measures or strict
Yeah.
development controls so that the development does not result into a hazard prone areas and impact the lower areas. Pero unsa man siya atong balaod ani kung ang kani siya ang rule ani sa HLURB ba ni? Yeah. Pero if you own the land and your slope is more than 18%, can you still build there, Zigfred? Unsa na atong balaod?
Marag dili naman siguro di ba gyapon pwede do kay subject man na to OBO kuan. Pero I will double check on that one. Kay subject ba to
Yeah.
OBO approval ba.
So tanaw lang na atong red line. Ang
Murag sa
kadaghan
National
namang-
Building Code dili na pwede. Sa National Building
kadaghan
Code
namang
even
balay
if it's
diha.
private.
Ababa na, mga balay diha. Ano man na sa na-allowed man na sila. So ilang gipatag, ilang yuta para sa Temple of Leia, you know. So what na 18% slope.
Amo tayo ingon dok nga hastang dagat magibutangan maganig muhon. Slope na bang more than 18%?
Okay, next. Yeah, this is just, this is a reminder. So, revised forestry code provides that no land of the public domain, 18% in slope or over, shall be classified as alienable and disposable. These are classified as forest land. Okay. In principle, only alienable and disposable lands are suitable for future urban use, according to the HLURB. Well, okay.
I mean,
18% maka 18% dili na ma-alienable o disposable kung imong yuta ang slope 18%. These are classified as forest. Pero mao lagi na atong lagi balaod, doesn't stick to this.
Mm.
Okay. Okay. So it's already almost 2 hours, so maybe we can just stop here.
Yes, Doc.
Kanya, any questions that we can answer them?
So far wala pa question pero basig na ay kuan additional comment si Jennifer.
unsa pinaka-recent nga zoning gani sa Cebu kanang for, zoning laws nato?
Ang akong nahibawan, ang 2024 CLUP, wa pa gina officially
Wala pa
na,
nila official.
wa pa na officially approved. I don't
Endorse
know
pa.
why.
Endorse pa
Ah?
sa kuan RLUC
In-
sa Regional Land Use Committee sa
Oh,
last
yeah.
December gi-endorse pa.
So, ang
There was someone
pinaka-recent nato katupag 96, I guess, katong ang zoning nato, right?
Mura o murag unsa na nga di ko kakuan sa year basta wala pa
the,
man
the,
ang bagong
the, the
facility.
last CLUP was 1983, and for some
83.
reason I don't
83.
understand, ang zoning ordinance appeared in 1996. I
Right,
don't know
yeah.
what happened in between. So, and since that time, all through the time of Cebu, it was all done by variance.
Oh my
So
gosh.
it's all arbitrary. It's
Yeah.
all arbitrary.
Suggestion lang.
Yeah.
Bahala na basta mobayad lang sa barya.
Bahala. Kuya sa dama sabi. Ang kuan bitaw ang karon kay daghan kay mga nagtukod sa bukid, and meanwhile grabe kaayo ang baha nato sa Cebu sad karon.
Yeah.
Ang ilahang
Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead.
ang what is that kuan nila karon ang di kay ko familiar sa ilahang battle sa baha karon nga murag unsay mga plans, is there a master plan para ana, or is it mostly just arbitrary kanang kuan lang sa nga mga piecemeal sa nga mga projects lang nila?
Ang update ana natay gubat sa batol sa baha. Batok sa baha pero napildit.
Okay, I have a question to Jennifer, the architect ng Gika. Unsa may implications? I know that in New York at the early part of the century, they were very strict about shadowing, no? Okay, especially during winter ba. So
Yeah.
naas like mga regulations nga mao ni ang height sa building karon dili ma shadow the whole day ang imong neighbors. So sa ato nga tropical country ta, is shadowing an important issue, or that's not an important issue?
I mean, there should be an important issue for it's mostly ang kibaw ko diha sa tropical kanang since it's a tropical country, ang important gid na gid is obviously like kanang passive nga mga kuan, right, nga ventilation and lighting. It's because there is a connection by the current architecture with shadowing and like shade and lighting with kanang people's welfare side, right? But ang importance, of course, it's important sa tuwa sad karon ang shadowing because grabe kay kainit karon sa Cebu baya. So grabe kay we're like people say concrete jungle ta. So that should be implemented yun sa kanang mga designs gid nila karon, but it
No, no,
depends.
excuse me. Ang akong pasabot ani. What happens if there's a very tall condo beside your property? Nga imong bay kanang mubo lang kanang single story or two story, and that tall condominium casts a shadow on your property almost the whole day. So wa kay init. So
Okay.
manghay ka, mutantom ang imong gipanghayhay mo
Well,
baho.
That's where zoning sa dunta would actually help, and that's where like kanang like
Correct.
kanang height kanang building height nga kanang mga directives nila, but like we don't do that. Well, like kuha ng mga tao, so unfettered kaayo ang ilahang mga rules karon. That's why nangutana ko unsay building code unsay pinaka recent nga mga building codes and zoning sa Cebu right now, because as far as I can see sa ako paglasa kung bisita mo lagi na mo na siya nga you see ka mga gagmayng balay mga dagko tagasking nga mga buildings maghunahuna ka nga it's only a matter of time ilara man na po ng gubong balaya kailan butukurag laing development na sad, so
Ang kuan, when I was teaching, ang akong estudyante, unsa may FAR diri Cebu? Siya na may FAR, sir. Tato, something like 18. 18 to 1. Pero I think that's really followed. Is it?
I
I don't
don't
think
know. It's
so.
probably not. No. I mean, like you said,
Yeah.
variance, right?
Yeah. And yeah, the other issue from an architectural point of view, when I was in Cebu, I think nakaabot ko ato ang last bagyo, si Odette ba to? Unya, ang akong hypothesis ato, na kani siyang tall buildings, niya, naabit ay mga low structures around it, it creates some eddies,
Mm-hmm.
unstable wind patterns,
Yeah.
or a wind tunnel effect.
Yep.
Nga ako na ang kuan nga kinahanglan man ta to no kung right on ta ning PIEP, we should have done a research para ma-associate nato ang structural damage of those houses beside these tall condominiums.
Yeah,
Wa
there
man sa
should be.
tayo. So what you take kuan, we don't have any data on this whether all these tall buildings create a wind tunnel effect,
Yeah.
these
Ang
eddy
kuan
currents.
it's ang kuan bitaw karon sa is like ang ako ang with especially with sa ako ang studies right now ako gipirmi ingon gipirmi is like we have to like revise yun ang responsibility of the architect beyond the building limits and should go beyond sa kanang community like a wider range yun because grabe kay impact ng mga buildings like you said kanang mga gipangtukuran ng mga condos. I don't think they did ang ilang due diligence to see unsay kanang impact nila. They didn't do impact studies for the next pila ka years. I mean dire lang good bisag gamay ra kay nga murag kuan. I mean, you have people protesting, maminaw dayon ang kuan, but has sa Cebu, I don't
Pero
think people protest that.
Pero ang kanigo na ang kuan good, I mean, wind tunnel effects. I mean, wind effects. Di ba lisod ra pug ani for our, resources here sa Cebu?
Wala man, di man siguro required ang wind tunnel studies sa kuan National Building Code. So
I
so
know San
far I have
Carlos
not
doesn't
heard.
have a wind tunnel. When I was there, the
Ako na
School of
ba is
Architecture.
always traffic impact ra gyud na, traffic impact.
Even that's probably not studied or said. Usab lang nato ang
Papel-papel lang, papel-papel for
kuan.
compliance.
Kuan
Pero
mayra na nato ang fee.
wala kuan kanang sa wind impact sa wind sa building wala.
As far as I know, wala kaayo kuan. Di man, it's like you said, variance na usually hindi sa kuan. But dire grabe kay strict kay ang implementation for that things good. But like kanang sa di sa Cebu, I don't know unsay makuha. I would like to think ang kana I would hope nga ang kanang tudloan sa nila sa mga architecture students and karon is more of like I guess social responsibility said, not just to like their clients but also to the community where asa sila nagtukod sa sila mga buildings because then it would create stuff like that like wind tunnels, like shading. It would it would create like a big social impact ng ilang mga buildings, but architects aren't taught like that. Di man ta kuan, like it's all about like, muna siyang design, muna yung kuan. But even here, like you see architects that nga bayran lang sila sa ilahang mga, so as long as like their clients are happy, so they're fine with that. But I would argue that architects have a big responsibility for like the buildings that they put up because it impacts like a large community for like long periods of time.
Correct. Correct.
Okay, Zig, we're already at 2 hour limit, so maybe we just continue this some other time.
Magkuan ta.
Basta
Session
kung
ta ini ka April siguro mag-schedule ta.
Okay, and then we'll continue this. Just mark
Yes.
where we stop.
Okay.
Karon
Kuan na
ma-discuss
2
na to.
hours na nya. Dako na tagbayaran na ni stasyon. Okay. Maybe
Well, I'm
kuan.
happy to meet you, Jennifer.
Me too.
Me too,
First
finally.
time nga nag-meet. Finally. Chat-chat
Bisaya
naman.
man magita ba? Bisaya puros.
Bisdak. Okay, so as we close the program, sa mga final words sa atong mga expert panel. So ladies first before we close.
I guess ang ako ang kuan is like in terms of like rapid urbanization and kanang privatization, like I think that we should care especially di sa Cebu because like right now like ang impacts of like privatization and like rapid urbanization is that like ang kaniyutan it all cascades into our own personal lives, right? We could always saying, oh, it doesn't really impact me kay it's not, it doesn't really impact me in my daily life, but then eventually it will actually cascade into the social order, right? That's why you end up with crimes, pandemics, health outbreaks, brain drain,
Drug
erasure,
take,
unemployment. Unsa?
drugs, food, drugs.
Drugs.
Hindi ka put sa
Drug addiction, right? So that's why we should
Because
care.
of the
So this
chaos.
is an ongoing conversation, right?
Right.
Yeah. So, okay, my turn.
Doc
ang ako
Ramon.
lang ko, a very quick one, very quick, ingon sila nga, kuamang ka, you're very pessimistic. Well, ang ako lang ani, we have allowed this, we have allowed this kind of patterns to fester. So, murag at this stage, ingon gani ka na ako, nakay solusyon. Ang nalagay ko solusyon, pero mahal kayo. You know, we can do something incremental, but
Yeah.
Yes.
but it's gonna cost you a lot. So I mean,
True.
if we are going to continue like this, no maura gini atong kutob ra kita ani, I always tell people that I'm not afraid anymore to say, nga if we continue like this by 2050, the living will envy the dead.
Yeah.
Mupait kig samot ang Cebu. No, you don't need to be a religious person to read the Bible. Pero my God, kung maingani ang Cebu, no, wa gitay. Ya karon na dagha para magkairon mga reclamation.
Mao.
Dagha nga reclamation, mao sa may
Minglanilla
impact
is
na.
starting one.
Yeah,
Minglanilla.
and I'm very scared about that, Zig. Kay if you continue to narrow the Mactan channel, we don't know wa masalig iti mga hydrological model unsay impact
Mao.
na sa currents. The currents will become swifter. The docking of ships will be more difficult. There might be more accidents. Kay kusog naman ang siya na current. Say current sa Bisaya. Ang sug,
Bawd.
ang sug.
Sug sa bawd.
Oh, ang
No?
sug.
Sug.
So, we don't discuss this thing sa muka ni mo, dalang butana.
Problema na sa mga kuan pobre. Mabahaan problema nila no? Sila kondo so
Oy.
problema.
Mao na.
Amog na butana. So,
Basi kung mabahaan
yeah,
sila sa bukid.
Mao na.
napagi sa bias may comment nga mubaha ka man pug muuwan. Mubaha ka man pug muuwan. Wa nay uwan muuga. So, what's the problem?
Disease,
Problem.
disease, cholera, malaria, dengue fever, musaka, of course.
Mo-compound ang wicked problems.
Ay, naginagid.
Okay. So, malo na ato kuan. We end on a light note kay ma-depress na niya ta.
Okay, so salamat sa atong mga experts karong gabi
it's a
una.
pleasure. It's a pleasure, and I'm
and,
happy
hopefully,
to meet Jennifer.
First
Who will be
time
one,
sa namong
one of
pag-meet
our
ni Jennifer.
thinkers, urban planner thinkers.
Nga kuan,
Learning every day,
mubalik
sir.
diri sa Cebu, pareha ni Ho Chi Minh.
Learning
luwason ang
every day,
Cebu.
Naghanting problema, ato na yung unpack tanan. Basta kick out sa Cebu sa kisabar.
Di welcome pa rin ni Dr. Ramon. Okay. So hopefully
Sige.
by April maka-schedule ta og lain nga kuan sa ngalan na lang sa atong mga tigpasayugda sa Inforcom o sa uban pa natong mga partners labi na sa Paglaom sa Sugbo. Please visit Paglaom sa Sugbo FB page onya so you can interact there and makapost mo og mga comments, mga questions na daghan mga experts dito nga nagpahipi lang pero naagid sila ma-contribute or para mahayagan sad mo og unsay mga move sa atong gobyerno, sa dagan na sa atong sosyedad. And empowered citizenry will also help kay mo raise og questions, magsaba-saba. Mo na lang gyud na, no? Kay lisod man kayo kay inefficient og grabe man ang corruption sa government. So hopefully what we are doing, educating the public for free, will contribute to the betterment of Cebu, morang-arang unta, the entire country, sa next generation na lang. So probably dili na siguro in the near term kay grabe gid kayo ang problema. Okay, so magbilin mi ninyo og usa ka mainggibi Sugbo and see you on April. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.